Hi folks, as you can see, I changed my background a little bit for the B section. So it's baboons for B, and we're going to start with adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers. For most of you, this is going to be your sticking point for Algebra 1. If you can't add integers correctly, you're going to have problems from day one. Some people are going to grab their handy dandy calculator to do these, which is not going to do them any good. I'm going to recommend that you do an enormous amount of practice adding integers. You don't really have to worry about subtraction because you never really do it. And we'll talk about that as I go along a little bit today. And hopefully you'll get a little bit of insight into adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing integers. So here we go. Let's take a look. Since the positive value is larger, we're talking about somewhere around 3.5 million. So the answer is going to be positive. This is a subtraction, and we're going to get positive 3,730. This is going to be a positive value. If you divide a negative by another negative, you end up with a positive, just like if you multiply. Of course, this is positive. If you add two positive values, you get a positive value. In this particular case, we don't do subtraction. When I see that double negative right there, when I see this, what I see is this, -2 minus -10. This double negative should be changed. We change subtraction to addition, and we add the opposite, which is a positive 10. One of my students in the community college in El Paso said, "Oh, Mr. Jimison, we're going to use the two-stick rule." Well, what he was talking about was that he said, he was basically doing this. He said -2 minus -10. And he said, I'm going to change subtraction to addition by changing it with another mark. And then I'm also going to make a mark to undo that operation. So 1, 2. This is the same as this is the same as this. So really, if you think about it, you're literally taking those two negatives and putting them together. Lots of ways of thinking about it. Basically, this is -2 plus 10. That's what I see when I look at this. Now this, for addition, my addition rule is who won. Since the positives win by 8, the answer is 8. And that always works, and it's a much nicer way of dealing with this. Let's put in my 8, submit. This is a negative 120 divided by a -12, and it goes in 10 times. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. One minus 8. Now, a lot of people are going to say, you should do subtraction. I don't think you should. I think you should change this to 1 minus 8 is the same as 1 change subtraction to adding the opposite. This, which has literally, there is a little positive here, even though you don't see it. Notice that there's no real change here. All I did is change the position of these two signs, if you want to think of it that way. This is -7 because the negatives won by 7. This is also -7. Subtraction is hard to do though, so it's a lot easier to do addition of integers. This is going to be -7. This is a division. Now I prefer to write them this way. -187 divided by -11. That is going to be a positive, and it goes in 17 times. Lots of ways of thinking about it, but there you have it, 17. $15 times 12 is the same as 30 times 6. I did my double and half method, which is 180. There's other ways of doing this, but basically what I did is I doubled the 15 and took half of the 12. Gives you the same multiplication. And this one is a little bit easier to multiply. So it's 180. Little number sense trick. Negative 90, of course. Oh, there we go. Get rid of these. Oh, let's actually put this in there. Negative 66 and negative 29. Now, because these two have the same sign, I'm talking about taking a sum. And when you add negatives together, a lot of people are going to mess this up. A negative times a negative is a positive. But when you add two negatives together, you always get a negative. That is always true. It's like this. If you go to the bank or to a store and you spend $66, and then you go to another store and spend $29, you end up spending even more. Now, if I add these together, that is 5, carry the 1, and that happens to be 95. This is a negative 95. Lots of ways of thinking about it, but hopefully that helps you get some insight. This is a division. I'm literally dividing 19 into 289, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it, sorry, 85. I'm going to go ahead and leave it in this form. So 19 only goes into 28 once, and I'll do the subtraction, do the American version here. Bring down my 5, and 19 goes into 95 5 times, excuse me. And we have 15, but the answer, because this is a negative, is a negative 15. So we need to put our negative on it. Okay, I see that positive. I see that as 80 plus 76. See those double negatives? Think of it like this, 80 minus negative 76. These two negatives are like two negatives being multiplied together. Or you can think of them like this. This means 80 plus the opposite, which is positive 78. And I'm going to take the 20 and put it with here and get 158. In my head, I'm doing what's called conjugation. I'm taking 20 away from here, putting it with the 80 to make it easy, 100, and I have 158. What? Oh. Helps if I actually pay attention to what I'm doing. Sorry about that. It's nice to make errors on occasion, I suppose. All right, so we've got negative 63 plus 32. This time I'm actually going to pay attention to what I'm doing. Basically, this is a difference because the negatives are larger than the 32. So we have negative 31. And lots of ways of thinking about it. I'm going to try and do it right this time. Negative 31. There we go. A negative times a negative is a positive. And be careful, you do have two zeros there. That is 200. (44 plus 34 is 78. (66 plus negative 60). Again, I like to think of who won. The positives won by 6. It's a good way to think of it. This is 76 plus negative 64. Some people are going to insist on doing the subtraction. Again, I like to think of it as 76 plus negative 64. And it looks like we've got a 12 as our difference. So the 76, the positives win by 12. That's what I'm thinking about it. 270 divided by negative 18. I'm going to show you something. 270 over negative 18. In general, it's better to keep your negative with your numerator. Some books, some textbooks are always going to put their negative in the middle like this. And I think it's very ambiguous when you do that. So I don't like the negative in the middle. I don't really like the negative in the denominator. I prefer to keep my negative in the numerator. But it's not wrong to leave it in the denominator. I just think that it's clearer to have a negative in your numerator. Now, 9 happens to go into both of these, and so does 90, but I can see the 9 a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 9, which gives me negative 30 over 2, which happens to be negative 15. It's a lot easier to do this division than it is to do this one. So whatever makes the most sense to you, I'm going to go ahead and put in my negative 15. Again, we've got a difference, and the negatives win. Some people are going to feel that they need to write this as a subtraction. Basically, we need to take the difference of these because we have different signs. That's a way of thinking about it. And 4 from 11 is 7. And we borrowed, so we've just got 7. And the negatives win because the negatives are, this is actually what's going on. I've got negative 71 plus 64, which gives me negative 7. (42 over 3, that is 42 divided by 3. I know that 3 goes evenly into 42, and the way I know that is that if I add the digits of any number, 42 for example, if you add the digits, the 4 and the 2 together, you get 6. Since 3 goes into 6, 3 goes evenly into 42. So when you divide this by 3, it's going to go in evenly one time. Subtract, and we get a 12, and 3 goes into 12 4 times. So my answer is 14. As an example, if I have a really big ugly number like 102,963, I know that 3 goes into 1 plus 2 plus 9 plus 6 plus 3. So 3 goes evenly into this number. Just a divisibility rule that you can use. So this is 14. I'm like going on a tangent. And here we go, almost done. That is negative 400. Don't forget your extra 0. This is an addition. Again, I see that double negative. I think of it as an addition. I'm going to go ahead and put my 423 and my 653 together. This is an addition. That is 6 and 7 and 10, 76. We have a subtraction. Keep in mind that that is the same as negative 872 plus 585. This is a difference, so I am subtracting. You can't really subtract these the other way. So a good idea is to leave the negative with the larger number, put the smaller number underneath, and do the subtraction just like you normally would. So 5 goes into 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. 8 from 16, notice I'm borrowing here. 8 from 16 is 8, and 5 from 7 is 2, and the negative wins. It's a good way to think of it. Some people, again, are going to grab their calculator. That is a really bad idea, although in my case, I did miss one of them, so I could argue that maybe you should do that. Negative 287. I just hope you won't. 237 divided by 3. Notice I'm adding the 2, the 3, and the 7. I'm adding the digits of that number. And when you add those together, you get 12. Since 3 goes evenly into 12, 3 also goes into 237 evenly. We say that 237 is divisible by 3. And if you need to, you can rewrite it as a division. 3 goes into 23 7 times. Subtract your 21. That gives you 27. 3 goes into 27 9 times, very evenly, and you have a 0 remainder. So the answer, of course, is 79. Ah, 1 times 80 is 80, but we have 2 negatives, so it gives us a positive answer. Oh, cancel. Helps if I put the answer in. 80, there. And we're dividing by 40. Let me show you something. Again, I'm actually dividing by negative 40. Negative 40 into 1600. Some people get a little confused about the extra 0 business. So one thing you can do is you can think of moving the decimal. You can always move decimals for decimal division, you know about that. But a lot of people don't realize that they can move the decimal backwards. In other words, you can change this one to -4 into 160. And a lot of people are going to find that this is easier to deal with. Another way of thinking about what I'm doing here is I'm taking 1600 divided by 40, and I'm dividing the numerator and the denominator by 10, which gives me 160 over 4, which of course is 40. Negative, well, in this case, it's negative 40. 4 goes into 16 4 times, and we get a 0. A lot of people are going to get a 4 out of this. Be very careful. Your decimal is literally here, and you don't want to forget your 0. So this answer, of course, is negative 40. And are we done? Not quite. Okay, we've got a double negative here. We are doing an addition. We're adding these together. Negative 820 plus negative 673. Be careful. Addition of negatives always gives you a negative answer. I like to think of it as debt accumulates. That is my justification for taking a negative plus a negative and always getting a negative. If you owe 820 and you borrow 673 more, you end up owing even more. So I'm going to add these up. That's 3 and 9 and 14, and you owe 1493. Sorry, I haven't looked up for a while. There we go. And are we done? Nope, not yet. Again, I'm looking at a difference here. This is a pretty straightforward subtraction, 931, and I'm adding a negative 561. And I am subtracting these values to get a positive value. The positives win. So I have a 0. 6 from 13 is down slow 7. And 5 from 8 is 3. So 370 is our answer. It is positive. This is just a sum. I'm just going to go ahead and add it in my head. That's going to be 577. Yep. This one, if you like, I could show you the trick for this, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and write it down. 217. Remember, that is a negative, and I'm adding 173. Again, I write it like this because this has the smaller absolute value. When I subtract, I get a 4. 7 from 11 is 4, and it is negative because the negatives win. That is a negative 44. And we're done. Took a little while, and I actually managed to miss one. Hopefully you won't miss any. Please do not grab your calculator. You don't need it, I promise. Even if you make an error, maybe you can learn something from it like I did. Got to be careful. So good luck. Keep practicing.